Okay, so let me give you a little background. So we are going to need, let's say we need 5 different jobs here. So number 1, we need a master of ceremonies. That's someone who just kind of keeps me straight on which composition we're pulling at any given time. So then there's number 2, the door. Number 3, the stamp. Number 4, the torch. I've got a firing diagram, and so we're going to pull center left, right, all the way back through, and I'll be pouring them on that slab. And I'll be briefly discussing the composition before we pour each one. The door, this is a 2-stop clamshell door. So your job is to stand here, and it's a little bit tight up here, but you go slow through center at the top because otherwise it can slam. So the first half of the rotation opens the bottom door, and then when it hands off the cam, however this is set up, when it hands off, I've seen it happen where if you go too quick, it jerks the top door, and it's a hot refractory brick, and you run the risk of making little chunks fall off, and it really could catch your paint leg on fire. So it's just more of a slow through center, and then open. I'll retrieve the crucible, and then as I'm pivoting and pouring, you just focus on carefully closing this back up. So that's the door job, stamp job. These are all those standard leather punch or metal punch letters, and so all of our compositions this semester are combinations with a 0. Where's my 0? Maybe they're just wanting us to use the oath. So it's a composition and then the last digit of the year. So A0, you would set that up, and it's common to do it backwards. You'll look at this and say A0 looks great, and then it's 0A. And so what you'll often want to do is set it up and then press it against your skin and make sure it leaves a mark that looks right. You often want to wear rubber gloves to cut down on radiant heat. You might think, oh, it's not going to be that hot. Usually after about the 3rd try, you go get the gloves. So you might want to get those to begin with. But the goal there is that if I'm pouring a little disc, let's say this is the disc of glass, it'll actually be a little bit bigger. And once the call comes out, okay, let's stamp it, you'll normally want to gently press in the bottom center of that disc, somewhere right around there. So don't put it right in the middle, but just a nice stamp at the bottom center. It'd be kind of like 6 o'clock on a clock, and just kind of press it in. It'd be kind of like cheese, Wisconsin cheese. It just kind of presses right in. It's an interesting viscous material. So that's the job of the stamp. And you'll just cycle through the different letters. The torch, as I'm pouring, it initially blobs out, and then there's this bead of glass that is cooling. It starts off at 1100, but it's constantly bleeding off heat as we go. So the torch, I've got another cylinder. I think we got enough for here. If you've ever done copper plumbing work, probably know your way around a torch. This is an auto start torch, so it's just one pull, but if you pull too quick, it doesn't always light. So it's a slow push. So it's gas and then spark. There's a little piezo that sparks to ignite it. And so once I'm pouring, you go ahead and just start, and then you're heating the string of glass from the crucible down to the puck of glass is being poured. And you try to get all the way close to the brighter inner cone of that flame. That's where it's hottest. And that way it just keeps fiberglass from forming, since the string will be a little hotter than both the puck and the crucible. Otherwise, there's just strings of glass and trying to move these things around, and we're all trying not to get burned or set people on fire. It's pretty exciting. That's the torch work. And then finally, the fireman. If anybody's ever had fire extinguisher training, I've got a lot of pet peeves with fire extinguishers. Oh, we don't want you to use fire extinguishers. We just want, in case of fire, safely, calmly exit the room. Well, what if the fire's blocking the door? Well, you should safely and calmly exit the room. What if somebody is on fire? We want you to safely exit the room. So there's lots of discontinuities because we can't ask people to run or use fire extinguishers because we don't provide fire extinguisher training. So we just want you to safely leave the room. It's like a broken record. Anyway, this is fire extinguisher training. I'm not going to discharge this, but it's the word pass. You ever had this before? Pass. You pull the pin. You aim at the base of the flame, not the flames, the base of the flame where the fire is. So pull, aim, and then squeeze and sweep side to side. Man, that is hard. That is rough. I have had fire extinguisher training, and that's it. So now you're trained. So anyway, we'll get the volunteers. The goal is if something happens and Dr. Ray sets himself on fire, like, flame up my lab coat or whatever, I'm going to be wearing a space suit here, which cuts down the possibility of that. But one of these years it's going to happen. So your job would just be to, extinguish my charred body quickly. Never had to use it, but I don't know. Just doesn't feel right if there's not a contingency plan. So, could I get somebody to volunteer to be the MC? Keep me going in the right direction. Anybody? You my wingman?
Sure.
All right, nice. Next up is the door, up close and personal, but not quite as much pressure as the torch. You might want to be my doorman. You might get some tips, the doormen sometimes get that, but probably not this time. Door, anybody?
Oh, yes.
Nice, thank you.
On the right down the road.
It's left, right, center, or center, left, right. Next up is the stamp. Who wants to stamp the glass up close and personal? Feel the heat.
I'll do it. You already got it.
All right. Who wants to be the torch? Torch, okay. And then finally the fireman, okay. So I'm going to rely on you. You got my back.
I got a whole sweat.
Okay, and if you didn't get one of these, you'll want to look at this, and I'll try to call out the relevant points so that we can know what's about to happen. And I've just got the camera set up on the display area here, and it's live streaming to YouTube. Tell your family and friends. Mostly it's so I can capture that, and we can look at the viscosity later. But if you wonder what's going on there, that's what's going on.
Hey, where these leather gloves at?
So I didn't have leather. It's actually hard to
So you
hold
told us
those.
there are gloves, but we don't use them.
No, I would use the rubber gloves.
Oh,
The
rubber glove.
nitrile gloves are usually enough for that.
Where they at?
They're in that box there, extra large.
Oh,
Yeah, so these over here, probably too small. Probably best bet right there. All right, so you might think this is overkill, and it is at the beginning, but at the end, it would literally set my shirt on fire because of the depth of that. It ends up being right here at the end. If I hold a piece of paper like this, when you open it, it catches on. It's just like 1, 2, poof. So the radiant heat is really something. All right, so the first one is composition A. And composition A is a straight run, 90-50, 25, silica, sodium carbonate, and calcium carbonate. So this will be our standard to compare the others against. And so I'm going to pour here and usually go in sets of 3. What's that? So you can stand right here in the best posture, and sometimes it gets kind of hot for you too, so I can get you another glove if you need it. But you'll usually curve in from the side, and there'll be a hot crucible here, but you just always kind of work in this orientation and just keep working with the flame going that way, kind of towards me if it's not far enough to get. Y'all ready to go? All right, composition A.
When do you want me to come in with the stamp?
I'll let you know. So you usually have a good 20 seconds.
This is A0, correct?
Yep, A0. So when I pull away, you'll then want to fire polish the top of the disc pretty aggressively to try to get the little dot and pull it into the surface. So now, yep, that's good. Hold on a second. You can turn it off now. So right about there, you can just press that into the
What
bottom.
about here?
Yeah, bottom edge, be just fine. You don't have to go all the way through, just a good impression. Hopefully you make a good first impression. Hopefully. So, yep, that's perfect. It's A0. So, not yet. So,
A0.
same date.
Now what's next?
So next up is B0.
Left side.
So this is a,
The high flux.
yeah, it's high on both. And so it's cut back on the silica, higher sodium, higher calcium. So anybody know what to expect? We would expect this
Yeah,
to be,
but
how
it's gonna be a
should it be
little
different?
On the
Right there.
on the O.
Higher flux.
I think that's right. Right?
There should be more of this.
They want here.
Viscosity is how thick it is. If we add more flux, we actually expect lower viscosity because the flux is what's breaking up the bonds of the silica. So if we add more of that, we're expecting this to pour easier because there's more flux as a percentage. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
Do you want to look at cameras so you could see?
Oh, I didn't even get the first one, did I?
That's
That's sad. Very sad. Yeah, I always get turned around, so I'm like, yep, I'll be pouring on this corner, but I didn't align it. So, yeah, we missed the first one. It's a crying shame. There's other ways to. Sorry about that, all you kids at home. So, I kind of doubt anybody's watching this.
YouTube channel's dead now.
Right, I just lost the whole audience. So anyway, it should be thinner, and then this has a low charge of cobalt blue. So we'll pour that one right here. All right, B0.
Yep. Left side.
Whenever you have metal in the composition, it definitely absorbs the heat a little different. You'll feel different radiant heat. So go ahead and hit the top there. And yeah, it gets pretty hot. You can go ahead and stamp it there. That's good. Burn yourself. Work. So you can see the fiberglass. Usually kick that under there.
So would higher flux material also cool faster? Or does not make a difference for that?
That's a good question. So, would higher flux make it cool? So the overall mass of material is still high, and we still follow Newton's law of cooling to attain room temperature. It's kind of a exponential decay of temperature. So I would expect the temperature to mostly fall off based on the mass present. It might be slightly less dense, but the flux is probably not going to impact that much.
Okay.
That's a nuanced question that probably would have, there is an effect, but practically speaking, it would probably be a small effect.
Okay.
That'd be the best way to put it. So,
We got an extra glove.
yeah.
Scissors up in here. I wasn't gonna sit on it. I was just gonna take the
So, you got these gloves. And you could probably still do the torch work fine with these, but the stamp work, these are difficult to do the stamp with.
I could see that.
Yeah,
That would
but
be fun.
Was that too hot? Didn't burn
No.
yourself? Okay. But you've got a little bit of a tricky thing here. You got to navigate the crucibles.
I didn't want hair in my mouth
Yeah. Yeah, I've took the hair off myself on a regular basis. Hopefully that's not going to start smoking. This is a fire-resistant pad, so it's probably not going to smoke. All right, so next up,
C0 on the right side.
C0. This one is low flux. I'm a little worried about this one. I think I might have cut it back too much. And then this is a chrome oxide, which makes a green color. This is the color they use for 7-Up glass bottles. I've never seen those. So this is what we're considering average flux. High flux, you'll notice it's a little bigger. This one, probably going to be a little smaller. Hopefully it will still pour. I think it'll pour. All right, let's do this. So this is C0.
It's coming. Oh, some good looking glass.
That's bad. Looks like there were some chunks that didn't completely get stirred up there. So that did not completely form. Well, unfortunately, that one's going to blow up eventually. In about 20 minutes. The problem is all those inclusions create a bunch of stress.
You want that stamped in down?
Yeah, go ahead. You can try it. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. No, it doesn't. We got about 20 minutes. It hardens with stress, and it hardens around. I saw unmelted salt in there. So those inclusions create these like differences. So when that hardens around it and the stress forms around it, eventually it squeezes too much, finds a weak point, and then shatters. And when it shatters, it usually shatters outward just very rapidly. So it would just kind of go out and down. So it's not like a grenade. You have to dive on it or something. But this also has an interesting characteristic called the striking color. The color of chrome glass starts off brown, and then it hits about 600 degrees, and then it strikes to the final green color because it coordinates with a different number of oxygens per chromium ion. But that's pretty unlikely to not crack, but we'll keep an eye on it. Just make sure we all have our goggles on. But yeah, definitely low flux. You can see the effect of flux. That was a new one that I should have not. I shouldn't have backed up that much. So
D0 in the center.
D0. So this is back to high flux.
Like small synthate.
So this is a high flux, but it's now a mixed sodium carbonate, potassium carbonate flux. So this is a mixed flux. The potassium carbonate is usually not quite as aggressive. So I would kind of expect something in between these two is what we're hoping for. And the color on this is copper. So this is going to be a copper blue. Interestingly, the torch will reduce some of the copper in the glass and make a metal mirror on the surface. But it'll be blue when you look through it. It'll be shiny copper on the surface, ideally. So when you're moving the flame over it, try to keep the flame on one side, and then we'll see a gradient of copper mirror to blue, hopefully across it. No pressure.
No, I plan the pressure.
All right. Ready? So we're pulling from center?
Yep, center.
All right. We'll back super years. Now hit the string of glass and let's heat that up so I can get loose. Probably go ahead and stand. So that'll be copper blue eventually. Oh, I mean, they're solid, but this is going to heat up to about 400 degrees. You could literally cook on it. You could cook on it by the time we're done. And so the way it's going to go, we'll pour these. I'm going to then put on 2 different 5-minute videos. We're going to then finish our crystallization, and then when it's cool enough, I'll move them to a light table front center, and we'll be able to do some more observations on it. It takes some patience on these to let them finish. You can see some swirls of copper in the surface. That's actually from carbon monoxide. From that, before it's converted to carbon dioxide, pulling oxygen out of metal oxide.
That looks pretty one-sided.
Thank you, guys. Good job. All right, so next up is E0. And E0 is, yes, this is the first time I've tried magnesium carbonate, so I think it'll work. And this is also iron, so we'll expect kind of a light greenish to amber color. Hopefully the magnesium flux will melt right, but we'll do it right there.
Left side.
From the left. All right. Just watch for the heat from the others there. Just wait for that to get brittle enough to break off my crucible tongs.
Do you just break the glass inside the crucibles to clean them out?
The crucibles have to be reused on similar compositions, and so in theory they can be reheated, but that doesn't exactly come out. So whenever I do reuse them, I'm using them for very similar compositions, so there's not a lot of cross-contamination. But the crucibles aren't super expensive per se, but I do try to reuse them when I can. You know, I've tried before, and I haven't perfected the glass composition yet. So it always shatters in the bucket for me. Yeah. You got to get just the right glass, just the right temperature. But yeah, once you get it right, you can make those things and you nip the end. There's some questions about this on the lab questions. And it's very unusual stress field on the way it behaves. I'm going to go ahead and put a beaker over this top one. There's a chance it's going to break the beaker too.
That's what I'm saying. Just gonna create a bigger glass bottle.
Is it changing colors?
Oh yeah, it's green now. Maybe put a crucible on top of it. Just
Yeah, why don't we do that? So this
That's what
could,
put it in the crucible. I mean,
I'm
why
going to
leave it
invert the
out?
crucible on top of it. So I'm going to scoot this over, which sometimes
It wasn't even 20 minutes.
sometimes the heat shock could make it shatter right then and there. And then we'll cover this with this.
And hope that doesn't kill us all.
We'll be okay. Yeah, it's not that kind of,
No? All right.
it's not that kind of explosion.
Well, that's good to hear.
There's also, that's a good rip. There's also some effect that you're hearing. That was it. Yeah, that was accelerated. That was accelerated by the fact I moved it to the cold surface, but that one was going to go anyway. So now I made it go on my terms. So now that's no longer a hazard per se. But we can keep it covered. But this chorus of sound you hear over here is called crazing. And it's caused by different rates of coefficients of thermal expansion. So as the ceramic is shrinking at a different rate as the glass, it creates stress and you'll get these stress cracks in the glass layers. So every time you hear that little sound, a new crack is forming. You can actually, if you're watching carefully, you can actually see some of them forming in real time. So
This one's go.
yeah.
This one's already fine.
All right. So what's next?
F0.
F0. F0 is a little bit of everything. And so I'm adding still high flux, but it's a sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. I guess I got a little excited. And it's manganese oxide, which should be purple.
And I think it's the one that you pulled out a little bit.
Yeah, it's stuck to the other one. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and reuse this spot. And so this is where we'll put the F0. All right, let's do this. Look a little sluggish. I don't know what's going on. So there's sometimes, usually there's bubbles, but I'm not really seeing a lot of color yet. So
bubbles with that one?
Well,
Or
there's usually bubbles formed from the process of making calcium oxide from calcium carbonate, magnesium oxide from magnesium carbonate. Carbon dioxide bubbles off. So those bubbles are often still there.
Yeah, that doesn't look purple at all.
But I'm not seeing purple, so either that's a possibility, but I trust you guys. I'm sure you,
Well, I'm just-
you said it was there,
it doesn't look like
It is, it's not purple.
but it's not.
Could be different.
I mean, it could. I've not mixed together sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium before. So is that conflicting with the color? Is the color there? Is it? I don't know. So F0, you guys, that team F0, did you remember putting in manganese? Were you F?
No.
Okay. Well, we can figure that out later, and it might still strike and get colored, but I don't know. It's a mystery for you after now.
G0.
There you go.
All right, so G0.
Mix this one, but yeah, one here.
G0 is the same composition as this one with nickel, which is usually gray, with nickel as the colorant. So we'll put that one right there. Pulling from center.
So this one's
Okay, let's go ahead and stand.
Yeah, that's all right. I know where it's moving.
Sneaking there. So resist the urge to pick up that fiberglass when you're up here later. It shatters and flexes and can stick into your finger so fast. I've had it happen to me before. It's
fiberglass gloves.
it's tricky because you think, oh, it's just gonna be like fiberglass insulation, and you start playing with it, and then all of a sudden it breaks and something stabs you, just like that. Well, usually this one is grayish, but right now it looks kind of purplish.
It's the middle one.
So it's got that middle.
Which is like,
Oh, well, this one's yours now.
Yeah, that's what's mine.
I told you it was gonna
is there like wood in there?
And the slab is hot. So next up we have H0. And that one is a mix now of manganese dioxide and nickel in a high simple flux glass. So hopefully it'll be like this and be kind of a smoky purple, maybe. So try to pour it right there.
Left side.
You guys are doing great. Nobody's died yet. And the gloves are only smoking a little bit. It definitely poured out nice, pretty quick. Okay, so there's color there. This is getting dark over time. You see how that started off looking a little bit hazy purple, but now it's deepening into a gray color. Still not a lot going on with that. Yeah. Maybe like a tan. That one's supposed to be purple. I would have predicted it to be purple, but yeah. All right, so next up we will pour
I0.
I0. This one is like low flux. I think we know what that means.
Dark purple.
And what was the mix on that? Oh, iron and manganese dioxide, yeah. Okay, so this is a low flux. Tempted to pour that one over here. So let me get it away from the others. There could be some complications. Think you got enough angle to not get burnt and kind of shoot from that side? The pros, they hold it sideways. So we'll go right there. The propane torch Olympics?
Right side.
Back in '96?
Yeah, 4 years before it's born.
Yeah. Okay. It's a little better.
Whoa!
Yellow flag on the play.
Didn't even flinch.
Ideally, that's all right. I'd leave it. We'll deal with that later. This won't be the most beautiful piece of glass, but its mother loved it. No, this is the.
That is not the control.
That's the
control
manganese.
is perfect.
That was the manganese that was acting kind of
That would get the
sketchy
control goes up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for some reason.
What do you think that might have been the torch angle?
So that happens. That does happen sometimes. What happens is it starts to cool. It then gets uneven heating from torch. That can happen. Usually, the way they're poured, as long as the flame is something you recently poured one, it doesn't do that. They're convincing thermal shot. We're gonna watch.
It didn't explode.
We're gonna watch later a video on some art glass, and they take these pieces and they're making big pieces and they anneal them. We are not annealing; we're quenching the glass, which is super hard on the glass. But there'll be examples of what this would look like if we were actually making something out of it. You have to thermally anneal it and be more careful. We're just letting it happen here. J0. That one is sodium potassium, high flux, copper iron. In the middle. Okay, so this one will be kind of I don't know what it'll look like. Some combination of those two probably. So back middle. Maybe angle this a little bit more towards me so the flames aren't hitting the previous row. Try to cut down thermal stress.
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other big chunks. Nobody's wearing flip flops, so feel free to kick that underneath here. Flip flops.
K0.
K0. Which is back to the mixed carbonate, some calcium and magnesium carbonate. Then we're adding a chrome copper. This is a chrome copper combo. So green and blue would probably be a little more turquoise-ish. That looks different. It's kind of a combination of those two. All that looks like the green. The iron seems to be dominating that more than the copper. Sure, if you guys were choosing the right ingredients. So we'll put that one here, and that one is K0. It's like a well-oiled machine now. Yeah. Separation anxiety. Stress. At least it's
Grail. They're just out of order. It confused me because after K came Q, I was like, wait. I think my alphabet is wrong.
Uh-oh. Well, only one more. So, yeah, we'll probably put it back here. And maybe put it right here so that the flame will be directed back this way.
Like that?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. So one more, L0, which is everything again. You were into trouble with that one?
It didn't change color.
Oh, that was the one also that blew up.
Yes.
Yeah. The second one that blew up.
Second. So who knows what's going to happen. So we'll put that right there. L0. That composition is a little more sluggish, and so that combination of sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, it seems like it's not as effective for some reason, or not as aggressive at fluxing. And what were the colors in this one?
Dark blue.
Chromium and cobalt.
Chromium, okay. So chrome, cobalt. So we
was
won't know what the final color looks like.
I'm gonna wait until we got them.
All right, so that's the full set for us. And these are probably still plenty hot. We'll see if it sets my paper on fire. That one.
My first.
Oh yeah,
No,
there we
no,
go. She's starting to go.
I can't see.
So the heat stays for quite a while. I could sell that one on eBay, you know. They sell it out there. So we'll have to give that at least a half hour. So I'd say I'm going to put on two different videos, one from art glass perspective, one from bottle glass perspective. And it kind of gives you a pretty clear picture of how this stuff can be used. So thank you for your help. So I'd say while I'm queuing up the video, you can go ahead and wrap up with your crystals, and I'll have visuals on yeah, it's not being infected. It's still charged, so I think it's okay. I hope it's okay. One of these years I go for it, and it's like nothing.
If I could describe.
So that gives us a little more experience with the glass.
I won't be able to see very long.
Oh, so that's gonna be a bummer.
No, I have my glass.